Hi guys, as e dey hot, na so I dey carry am come. Labour Party spokesperson Dele Farotimi has cleared the air on how Mr. Peter Obi will end the incessant strikes in our universities since 80s. Also said that financing of education is not a cost, it's an investment. When a government see it as an investment, it means they can anchor their vision for the future. Guys, watch the video and hear from his mouth, and also share your thoughts with us.
Let's go straight to it this morning. Because a lot of people are also saying, let's fact check. They said in his speech while in the university, he said in his time there were no strikes. And a lot of people said, oh, while Obi was still in school, that you have had the Ali Must Go riots, that had segued into a lot of things. And how is he going to end the incessant strikes that pretty much have dogged our university system since the 80s? Or some people like to count the first official strike from the late 80s, the Babangida debacle, up till now. So those are two things to put forward there. We weigh all sides of the conversation.
No. Yeah. It's only right that journalists should ask questions.
Yeah.
And it is only proper that society should be informed by the questions and the answers that will be provided by the candidates or anyone who is looking for political office. So these questions are right, and they should be asked. To answer the question related to fact-checking, I don't understand what universe some people live in. But I grew up in Ibadan, and one of the areas where I grew up in Ibadan was the University of Ibadan. I went to Abadina Primary School in UR.
Great Abadina.
Yes. And I lived across the road from the campus at Olorogun Junction. So I can speak to an extent about the university system that must have nurtured Peter Gregory Obi. When he said there were no strikes in his days, I would say that is factually correct. Factually correct because strikes were few and far between, and the Ali Must Go to which they refer wasn't an ASU strike. It wasn't the academics on strike. As far as I can remember, it was a student strike. And as of that time, the Nigerian state responded to that strike exactly as it has always responded to every challenge to its autocracy. It killed, it murdered. My first contact with the Nigerian state was during the Ali Must Go riot, and it was me sniffing tear gas. So when they speak about strikes in the 70s, particularly in the 70s and the 80s, they speak ignorantly, because we're talking about a situation today where students are at home for upward of 9 months. We're talking about a situation today where the universities are functionally higher secondary schools, if the truth be told. So if they should not be comparing apples and oranges, compare apples and apples. When Gregory Peter Obi said there were no strikes in his days, he is completely correct, and I stand by that. There is nowhere in the world where you will not have industrial disagreements. But nothing of the sort that we are having today. If it was in those days that somebody would dare to go on strike and shut down the universities for a month, this country would have been grounded to a halt. Even in my own days in the universities in the 90s, this level of nonsense would not have been tolerated and allowed to become normal in our space. So let them not be speaking to that. And there was something you said in your intro that Peter Obi claimed that the university system more or less destroyed. That's not a claim. That's a fact. There is nowhere in the world where people understand the fact that education is an investment in the future of that country and in the youth of that country, where something as intolerable as 9 months closure, and that is normal because the children of everyone making the policies, including myself, our children are not in the Nigerian universities. It is the poor who send their children to Nigerian universities, and nobody cares about them anymore. If I had been born in this generation, I would never have entered the four walls of a university. And I met the rump of the destroyed university system. So when he said, it's not a claim, it is a fact. But the unfortunate thing is that is not confined to the educational sector. We're not dealing with sectoral failures in Nigeria any longer. We're dealing with systemic collapse. That is the reality that is staring us in the face. We keep using all these euphemisms in place of the real words that should communicate the reality of our situation. The educational system is completely unfit for purpose. The reality is you actually have to retrain, reorient. It's not just the educational system. We can have these farcical gyrations about sectoral failures, or we can look at our abject nudity in the mirror that is before us and admit to the fact that the system has collapsed. So it's not a claim, it's a fact.
So how will he prevent this that have been going on for a while?
No,
strikes. How will he stop? Because he made a promise that he's going to stop strikes.
No, it's a simple enough thing. It's a simple enough thing. And I'll take it from the macro level. If you, as a parent, as a husband, opens up the finances of the home to the point where there are no opacity, nobody is wondering what might be hidden under the table somewhere. It's not like you have prioritized the well-being of the rulers whilst ignoring the welfare of the citizens who are non-existent in the current reality. If you open up the books, if the people understand that this is what the government has, and you prioritize based on the needs and the vision that you have for the future, nobody is going to demand that you should bring what you do not have.
Okay, so on the subject of money, which was what I was going to actually start with, education financing is huge. This present administration for the 2023 budget allocated 1.79 trillion to education, the second largest after defense and security. And very good, compared to the last. It still falls way below the United Nations recommendation of 26% of the budget. This was 8.2% of the entire budget. It is expensive to fund education. In fact, one of the main reasons for the strikes you're talking about, in terms of preventing the strikes, was more funding, ASU's agitation for more funding for universities, and also a review of salaries of lecturers. And the federal government is saying there's no money. And if your candidate does become president, he's going to be dealing with the repayment of 77 trillion naira loan. Where will he get the money to actualize this statement that he's made as to no strikes if he does become president?
You see, I am of the firm opinion that openness in governance is the first antidote to strife in the populace. When the populace have a clear understanding of exactly what the government is doing at any point in time, what are the financial resources available to the government, and how are these financial resources deployed? These are the reasons why the industrial actions either fizzle out or persist. That is one. When you look at our educational system, just as with every other sector of our national life, the reality, and I've said this way too often, but it bears repetition again, it has been destroyed almost beyond repair. You actually have to reimagine it. And in our educational sector, we would actually have no choice but to reimagine it. We have to ask ourselves exactly what is the purpose of education in the digital age. Exactly where are we preparing our children to go? Are we raising back into antiquity, or are we looking to catch up and bridge the gap that already exists? However much might have been voted to education, if you are still putting, for as long as you keep pouring water into a basket, no matter how much effort you put into your water fetching activity, the basket will not get filled up. We're dealing with a system that is patently unfit for purpose, riddled with corruption, and definitely not serving the future needs of the Nigerian people and the state itself. So first thing first, you need to take a look at our educational system. I'm in the construction industry to an extent, and I've been tangentially there for about the last 25 or so years, where I've serviced the real estate industry. And what I can tell you is this. In all of that time, 90% of the artisan class that works in construction in Lagos, don't let me generalize and say Nigeria, in Lagos, 90%, if not more, of the artisan class, from bricklayer to carpenters to tilers, plasterers, they are either from Ghana or from Togo or from the Benin Republic. Now, you might wonder, what does this have to do with education? That is part of the problem we have evolved for ourselves as a people. We've trained people who go to university to learn philosophy, to learn IRK, big Bible knowledge, but we don't have the capacity to train those who build nations. We cannot have engineers. It pains me when I look on our street, I see road constructions, I'm seeing third-grade expatriates brought from, as long as the skin is white, he's able to do the job, and yet we have engineers graduating all over the place and we have unemployment. These are the real issues that we would have to deal with. Take another look at our educational system. Why are we graduating illiterates, certificated idiots? I'm sorry to say, pardon my French, but the reality is that we are graduating people who do not have the capacity to deduce logically and who have been, in fact, what you have had actually, if the truth be told, is a situation where the state has enabled weaponized ignorance. You are teaching people to be ignorant by the time they graduate so that you are able to dictate terms to them. Financing of education is not a cost, it's an investment. When governments see it as an investment, it means that they can anchor their vision for the future to whatever they are doing in the educational sector. When I was in school, we had woodwork workshops. There were metalworks workshops. What has happened to all of those? There were technical colleges. What has happened to them? What has happened to them? Cobblestone roads, we can't even build. That is 18th century technology. We cannot. Okay, thank you very much. I stand to be corrected. But the fact remains that we have built a system that is patently unfit for purpose. So whatever else Mr. Peter Gregory Obi might do or not do, we must understand that the cornerstone of whatever he's going to do will be openness so that the people understand exactly where we are, connect the people to the vision for that policy, because it's not just about education. We have systemic collapse. That's what we are facing.
Okay. Can the government honestly, and is this part of your plan, because I read your manifesto and I didn't see anything extensive. Can the government honestly still fund university education in this country?
Now, let me say this.
And how much do you think it's going to cost? Have you been able to cost it in your plan?
Rufai, if anybody is telling you they have an exact idea of what they are going to find after the ruinous years of General Buhari and the APC, they will be lying to you. The only thing anyone can give you at this point are broad outlines and then their own integrity behind a plan to do better. What we see today is a situation where, whether we like it or not, government on its own cannot and should not be funding university education. This is my belief. I don't know what the ubiquity policy will be by the time they look at the realities, but I personally believe that the government should not be the exclusive funders of universities. This is without prejudice to the fact that there should be availability of students' loan. This is also without prejudice to the fact that there should be scholarships and interventionist funding for less privileged persons who are going to be attending those schools. And in any case, if you check out the costs that the country is already incurring educating Nigerians outside of Nigeria who are largely lost to Nigeria by the time they are done with their education, you will realize that we would actually be subsidizing our own stupidity if we make sure that the government adequately funds education, whether that be by taxing us properly, whether that be by them stopping the leakages and the wastages that has overtaken our land. But education is an investment in the future.